Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Two Jews, 10 Opinions. I'm Levi Diamato.
And I'm Ailee Shanes.
And today we are joined by Luc Bernard, a video game designer. He's made a lot of Holocaust video games specifically. Luc, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
And I wanted to first just ask you a very broad question, so you can introduce yourself, basically. So talk to us a little bit about your Jewish background and your love for video games and how the two collided.
Well, so I think the way I kind of start off with it is kind of been doing video games since I've been actually making video games since I was 16. I'm 38 now. Time goes by bloody fast. It does. And it was over 10 years ago, maybe when I was 21. There was a lot of World War II video games, but none of them really addressed the Holocaust. They didn't. So that was kind of bit my problem, because to me it's like video games are bigger than movies and music combined. They're the shape of culture. It's kind of the biggest part of the entertainment industry. So I thought it was weird that it was never addressed. So I'd say at this point, since I released the game Light and Darkness last year, 3 years ago, I pretty much decided, because I wasn't paying any funding for my game or anything, I wasn't. So I went crazy and decided to self-fund everything myself and release it for free, which I did last year in January, Light in the Darkness. It's the first video game about the Holocaust set in France. And released it first on the Epic Games Store, then PlayStation, then on Steam this year. And we have more platforms for the Switch, for Xbox, all those things. And so that was the first thing which I did. And then kind of in September, I released the first and only Holocaust museum inside Fortnite. I did too, so I didn't stop. And yeah, I'd say we have disrupted the space. We have, because before, organizations would be like, you could never do the Holocaust in video games. It's because, honestly, it's ran by old people, not to be mean. So they don't understand what a video game is. They don't. They think video games are just Pong or like only Call of Duty multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I'd say we've opened up the space where now actually do take gaming seriously, and we've received zero negative feedback. Instead, it's that we're doing more and more things within that space with video games. So it's been pretty positive, I'd say.
You said this was from around 3 years ago when you started?
Well, yeah, when I just self-funded and went nuts, pretty much, because we just weren't getting any funding. We weren't for over a decade. So I was like, let me just do it myself.
Got you. What type of what made you think that there is a need for the Holocaust to be involved in the video game industry?
Well, like I said, it's because we're bigger than movies and music combined. One of the things which moved Holocaust awareness the most worldwide was Schindler's List. It really was that period. And so and plus, I kind of saw nonstop everyone say Holocaust education is down, less and less people are aware, this and that. And so I'll give you guys one example. So last year, Claims Conference put out a survey. So like 8% of Americans have been to Holocaust Museum. I was like, well, that sucks. Okay, solution. I make one within Fortnite. A digital one, bam. That easy. So I'm a solution-based guy. I'm not a complaining guy. And so when we see again kind of Holocaust education be not worse and worse, but less and less people aware of it, we're clearly failing and we need to change things. It's not by putting more funding in things that don't work, we're going to continue, because again, the younger generation operates very differently than my generation, for example. My generation was movies. Now, even me myself, I have the choice between, I don't know, a role-playing game was 100 hours or TV show or movie. I'm going to do a role-playing game because it's better. Like, I'll give one example, like The Witcher. Witcher game is fucking awesome. TV show sucks. It does. So that's kind of what I mean. Like, it's just games are just better. They are. So it just made sense. It did, again, from a pop culture kind of way too, because that's where the Holocaust is more known, because there's been so many movies made about it, but young people, they just don't care about movies anymore. So it's kind of like how have some friends. I even have a friend he's in Israel, and he's a Holocaust survivor. He had a big account on TikTok, all those things. And I was very much like, again, why wasn't anyone on TikTok before? Why did it take Holocaust survivors and their grandkids to be like, let's go on TikTok? So I'm very critical, like, but not in a negative. No, I wouldn't say it's a negative way. It's more like, hey, we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars inside to these buildings, right? Where only 60,000 people visit it a year. Light and Darkness has gotten over 900,000 people who have finished it. Keyword finished it. $0 spent on marketing. And the Fortnite Museum was in the millions. $0 on marketing. So that's coming. It's more like, hey, I'm a big believer in things can be fixed, made better, but it involves being pragmatic and kind of doing things differently. So again, even if I'm super critical, I come up back with my data and showing that things can work. Very much so.
I'm curious what went into creating the Fortnite Holocaust Museum, and what was kind of the initial feedback and response of when that kinda came out?
So started making it. I did always had a relationship with Epic Games called Life and Darkness, which used the Unreal Engine and was launched first on their store. When I started making it, I kind of put out a tweet I did at one point. I was like, can I making this? It went viral, it did. And so Epic then directly reached out to me and they were like, we want to make this happen. Because within Fortnite, you're not allowed to make things about genocide or put in real photos. Those two things are no-no. They are. It just breaks all their rules, it does. So Epic Games directly worked with me to get those rules changed just for the Holocaust Museum because they were super excited about making it happen. So I would say it went super positive, and mostly the shit show that ensured was on Twitter when Nick Fuentes basically discovered it, and then I just ended up in a big public war against him and his groypers. That was a very negative thing. If not, the museum doesn't get any hate, but we also have disabled emotes and voice chat. We have Epic helped us do it because Epic did the Martin Luther King thing, which went really bad. So it's kind of like, let's not have that thing happen again. So that's what's become fascinating. And I often joke about this on Twitter too, about how Holocaust museums in Fortnite are the safest space in real life Holocaust museums. Because I just saw in Amsterdam that got kind of protested in front, all those things. And it's just Epic have been really supportive of it. Like now we're even with them this June launching a pilot program happening first in Los Angeles where students will be able to make their own Holocaust museums within Fortnite. And we're planning to bring that nationwide. We're planning to reach at least over 20 million students in 2 years. So Epic have jumped fully on board with this thing. And so that's again what I mean. I think, a big example, I think the ADL does fantastic work. And I know the gaming division there. But when the ADL, say for example, compared Fortnite to a social media site and gave it a rating worse than Twitter in terms of Holocaust denial policy, and Epic was kind of like, mate, we're a video game, we don't need to do that, right? That created a rift. Instead, what we did, we collaborated with them. So I think our solution, which is, okay, now there's actually Holocaust awareness within Fortnite, is way better than just giving them a bad note just because you don't agree with some policy thing which they have. Because a video game is different than a social media website. So that's, again, a more solution-focused than complaining-focused.
Bringing it back to kind of like the conception of the video games, this question goes both for the Fortnite Holocaust Museum and the Light in the Darkness. When you're designing this game, you're obviously targeting it towards like a younger generation and age demographic. How do you kind of give them like an accurate enough Holocaust depiction and with historical background information, and also like keep them kind of not entertained but focused on the game at the same
Well, you just basically tell a good story. You do. It's
time?
kind of like, let's put it this way, people, it's like films, right? It's like thinking people only want to go see Michael Bay films, blockbusters or Marvel films, right? Video games can be anything we want them to be. So it took us a year of research, all those things. We actually did have historians at one point. The historians kept on getting into everything wrong. They did because I didn't trust anyone, so I was like, I'm going to triple double check. So we just ended up doing everything ourselves, and we ended up becoming experts on the Holocaust in France. We did. And that's again when I suddenly realized, well, I was like, I think the problem also is that within Holocaust education a lot of people are in charge of a snobby. They are, where they kind of look down on people, where they're kind of like, I'm so knowledgeable because I have a PhD, all those things. It's like, no, you have to make education available to everyone. And funny enough, one of the best resources online is the US Holocaust Museum's website in Yad Vashem. So everyone can access those things. And when we used photos from the US Holocaust Museum, I asked them, I was like, can I take the photos? And they're like, fuck yeah, just take them. We don't care. They're there. Just use them. Very much. And what was interesting too is this PhD guy in the UK, because we got lots of good articles around Light and Dark, so he got kind of pissed off about it. And he basically did a comment where he was like, on Twitter, where he said, those people looked up Wikipedia for a day and think they're experts. I wrote back to him and I was like, one of the case was on Wikipedia. And I was like, okay, so if you think very much that people can't learn about the Holocaust by reading words, right, off a website, then you basically publicly admitted to me Holocaust education doesn't work. And we were meant to do a debate, all those things he pulled out. He did because we do come with the facts and all those things. And I think, and I would tend to agree with that, actually, for enough. I don't think Holocaust education works. I think it's been a disaster. I think we can see how it is nowadays, how everything has failed very much. And I think it's just because we haven't focused on trying to create empathy. And also, it's made it seem like anti-Semitism started and ended with the Holocaust. So say, for example, in Light and Darkness, have one character, Miss Ailee, who's renames himself Bernard because he basically immigrates to France. He's from Algeria, right? And one scene you kind of go into his past, what happened during the riots, so those things kind of showcase, again, anti-Semitism was before the Holocaust too. And also to show Sephardim, because that's one thing which was fascinating, which I started noticing among Holocaust museums in the US, not the big one in DC. None of them talked about North Africa. None of them. And I'm like, it happened in North Africa. The Libyan Jews got deported to Bergen-Belsen. It happened. I even remember at one point I had a meeting at a Holocaust museum with a CEO, and the question that came out of their mouth was, are Algerian Jews really Jewish? And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about, kind of thing? And so that's why when you have, again, there's fantastic educators at these museums, when you have CEOs ask that question and don't even know, because again, the Holocaust, it was whatever the Nazis could get a hold of, pretty much, it would happen there. So even I think there is a form of distortion, not distortion, but kind of lack of talking. People just think it was an Eastern European thing. They don't realize what happened in North Africa. And France is important too, because France, it happened in a matter of years, where France was, I would argue, the best place for Jews in Europe. I would argue that. I still stand by that. But then ended up doing a genocide in a matter of years. Because don't forget, there was a criminal decree when France colonized Algeria. So they're like, Sephardics, we love you, giving you citizenship. Then you had a prime minister at the time, Leon Blum, who was Jewish, who had all the things. That's why all the Polish Jews were trying to get the fuck into France during World War II, because they're like, shit, let's get in France. That's where we can be free. Of course, anti-Semitism existed, like the Dreyfus Affair, all those things, but that divided France. It was very, very different than the rest of Europe. But again, the French government did a genocide within the matter of years. It wasn't so much like Germany, where you could really see it fucking coming. You could. So that's why I think, again, it's a very interesting moment in history to kind of look at, because again, it can show how fast it can turn. So that's why, again, Holocaust education, it needs to be better. It needs to address all things, because I think that's also distorted things, how, in America, where they're like, Jews are white, this and that, and I'm like, no, it was about the elimination of the Jewish race. And in Europe, race science wasn't in terms of skin color, it was very different. It was, and Sephardim were also caught up in it too. And one key thing too, because within the Holocaust Museum in Fortnite, I show one key person, which I think makes a lot of people understand. Edith Stein, she was a nun. She got killed because she was Jewish, ethnically. And that really shows it was a racial genocide, not a religious genocide. So that's again one thing, because even when I remember going to a debate with a couple of American Jews at one point on Twitter, and they were kind of like, no, it was a religious genocide. I'm like, you don't know your shit. So that's kind of what I mean. Because even when you see in Israel, right, sometimes the politicians, when they're kind of like, you Ashkenazi, it's because you were all bad people that the Holocaust happened to you. It's like, happened to the Sephardics too. What on earth are you talking about? So that's what I mean. I've noticed again, within Jews, they don't know the full context of the Holocaust. So that's why I think we have failed, because when we have hundreds of millions of dollars spent on these museums, spent on these things, then say, for example, only reaching 20% of the American population, that's fucking bad. That is, because even listen, Light and Darkness has had a huge success in Saudi Arabia. It has, like, that's coming translated to Arabic. We've had huge success in the Arab countries. It all depends how you approach things. It does. So my big thing really of kind of disrupting the space. I've talked to nearly every single big Holocaust organization. I've even done webinars with the Israeli Holocaust Education Ministry. I'm just trying to push people into the digital space because it's not working in its current form, and they kind of let everything be distorted and taken over by everyone else. And that's why it's time to kind of fix that. And I do believe it is fixable.
How do you explain this concept to, like, people who are in Holocaust education who are older? That's what you've been kind of saying, that it's a problem because of a lot of the higher ups are older and don't understand this. When you're pitching a Holocaust museum in Fortnite to, let's say, like, Yad Vashem, when you're talking to Yad Vashem or U.S. Holocaust Museum, how do you make them understand it?
So those two big ones, they're too big. But what's great with them is that they just steal all our stuff. They don't even like. There's young people there, and they just like what I do. So just like, just steal it, dude. We won't do anything. You can take everything. But for the smaller museums, which are those two ones, it really is the board. It's not the educators. It's not everyone who actually does the work daily. It's the boards that doesn't understand. And the boards are just really out of touch. They are. But the problem is, and they have done fantastic work, and what they do is important work, but it's not reaching enough people. So I remember I had a meeting with one Holocaust museum, and I was like, you need to be reaching the entire state, not the city. And everyone who worked there agreed on it. It was the board who didn't agree on it. So, and that's just kind of what is happening. So that's why I push and I ask for new leadership, younger leadership, because I do think we do have to at one point pass the baton off to the younger people, like me, for example. I'm 38. I have no clue how TikTok works. I look at TikTok, I'm like, oh my God, like, this thing is awful. And then I just leave it. I'm 38. I am. So I even think like younger people should be in charge of things. The younger people be like, okay, this is how all these things work. So I'm even advocating for younger people than me of kind of taking over. So again, I do think it is fixable. I do think we will get to that point. But I think right now we are in a moment in time where we need to change things. We do, because it just hasn't worked. It hasn't. I mean, it's this way, because I'm able to finance things because I have a normal day job, my own other company I do. But it's this way. If I work for a company and my numbers keep on going down, everything keeps on getting worse, I get fired. I too. Someone else gets put in the job. So that's kind of what I mean. And it's harsh. It is, but I think it's time to switch up things. It is, just because what we've seen about how bad it is right now. I mean, and I think I really noticed it last year when I was fighting with Nick Fuentes on Twitter. It was so bad that the Israeli government got involved. The Israeli government basically
I saw
hit me
this
up.
go down on Twitter when this was happening. But
Yeah,
sorry, go on.
It was a disaster. I end up on French news, on Turkish news, like I-24, all those things. And not one American organization reached out to me to be like, how can we help? Can I do this? Was the Israeli government. I'm not Israeli. I've never been to Israel. It was the Israeli government who reached out to me. It's like, they're like, we're going to tell Twitter what the fuck is going on to make sure they fucking fix this. And that's when it really hit me last year. I was like, the organizations can't do their work anymore. So I was thinking, like, I can take it. And sometimes it was kind of funny to a point. When you see so much, it becomes funny. But I was thinking, like, what happens if it's a young kid or a young person who gets triggered a lot? And that's the thing, they're not proactive. They're waiting till everyone goes to them. I'm like, no, you have $100 million of budget a year. You should be helping people. You should be going out, reaching out to them, doing all those things. So that's why, again, I'm very critical about that. It shouldn't take the Israeli government having to get involved. It shouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm curious about what plans you have to create video games for Israel education, and with everything that's happening with Israel and Hamas and this conflict that's going on. Do you have any plans to make any video games about that? And are video games a good way to demonstrate this?
Well, so I do know how to change things in regards to Israel, but it's a different method. It is compared to what other people are doing. So when I saw the Nova Music Festival documentary, I did go invited to a private screening. I know a lot of hostages' families, which we'll go into later.
Yeah.
And say, for example, for the Nova Music Festival, to me, I was telling them, I was like, release this on Twitter, release this for free on Twitter, because even the people who deny it will quote tweet it, create lots of engagement, and everyone will be able to see it. So I have a lot of friends in Lebanon, for example. And my Lebanese friends are like, they hate the Israeli government. They're Lebanese, it's normal, right? It is. But they're like, this documentary needs to be seen. It does, because they're like, what happened at the Nova Music Festival was fucking atrocious. And the only way for lots more people to see it is putting it out on the internet, YouTube, Twitter, all those things. So the fact that people are going more via the traditional route, which is let's get it out on the streamer and this and that, I'm like, great, put it out in the same bubble in America, all those things. Like, you need to put it out worldwide, because now we're connected to everything worldwide. Another thing, for example, since I veer very left, I'm very much supportive of the Israeli left. I am. And me, say, for example, on my Twitter, I amplify a lot the protests going on, those things, because to me, Israel is a democracy where lots of people have different opinions. Lots of people are different. Some people support X people. I'm like, fuck Netanyahu kind of guy. And, you know, there's left and right. And us not showing even the protests and all those things going on makes people think right now everyone's supporting Netanyahu, which is not the case. There's a large portion that's going to be protesting and stuff, but like, to bring the families home, to want to deal all those things. And when I'm seeing, because again, it's a democracy and it's a normal country. Within every normal country, the police do bad things, this and that. And so I believe a lot more in showing Israeli society how it is for real, very much, which is, you know, people disagree, they fight, and there's issues with the government. Because again, I come from France, you sound British. I've been protesting the French government since I was a teenager. I love France. I want it to be better. So I feel the same way with Israeli protesters. So to me, kind of, I've told a lot of people since October 7th, I've become pro-Israeli citizen, not pro the Netanyahu government. I haven't. And I think that's where you need to veer more towards, very much, because I think that would also show a lot more people like, hey, Israel's not what you think it is. It isn't, you know, because the anti-Israel people think, they basically think it's a bunch of Ben Gvir supporters, you know, up in the roads, where it's like, no, everyone fucking hates that guy. So it'd be more healthier to kind of show that pretty much the difference of opinion or those things. Like, just show it's a normal country. Because when I was in France, right, this is one super fascinating thing, is among French Jews, we don't have any discussions about Zionism. We're just like, Israel as a country exists. It's in the Mediterranean. It's great to do parties in. And so I think because we don't, because to me, Zionism was successful, 1948. Successful, the country exists. Great. That's it. The end kind of thing. I don't know why we're still talking about a political thing, this and that. And I think the obsession over Zionism still has created a lot of people to be anti-Zionist. It has. Well, to me in France, it's more like Israel's a normal country, you can criticize it how you want. So even if you look at Macron, Macron has been one of the biggest supporters of the hostages. But he's one of the first people calling for a ceasefire. He was, you know, so it's very different how France operates. Macron was also one of the first people to tell Netanyahu, like, what are you doing with justice reform here? So I believe if you're a friend, right, and your friend's acting drunk and he's doing all bad things. As a friend, you're like, hey mate, chill out. You shouldn't be doing this kind of thing. And that's how fails the current coalition. And that's why I think it would be healthier if we showed the protesters who are doing like Netanyahu, all those things. Because again, it's showcasing, something different. But that's why I do have a different approach, where I have been looking at maybe doing something about the Nova Music Festival. I have very much so. And I have, funny enough, so you're asking about Israel and video games. So we did two things which we used Fortnite for the hostages. One for Anya Gil, who they were held by Hamas, two teenage boys. They got released in November, thankfully. So we did one thing for them because Fortnite was their favorite game. I worked on that with their mother. And then we did something for Noah Agami with her roommate. But when Anya Gil got released, right, Epic Games did something fantastic. I asked them to do it. I was like, can you send them something? Because they're fans of your game. Can you send them something? So they sent them swag. They sent them V-Bucks, all those things. They were very kind. They were. It was fantastic how they were towards those kids. And that's, again, I think we're just doing lots of things wrong. We are. I think, again, because even if you look in America, right, when there's wars, there's always anti-war protesters. It's a democracy. It's just how it is. There's always going to be different opinions. Same thing in Israel. So I just believe very much more supporting the Israeli civilians and amplifying what is going on there. And I don't think it makes Israel look bad. I think it makes it look good. It does, because it shows this is a country where it's not, what everyone imagines, where they're like, this is a huge fascist, genocidal, all those things. It's like, we're talking about, guys, like, this is completely different. You have all these people out on the streets for peace, all those things. Like, what are you guys talking about? So that's why I believe a lot more in kind of showcasing that and starting to treat Israel like a normal country, meaning criticize it for the policies of a certain government, but not criticizing, Israel's. Because again, in France, because even Macron said anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, because the reality is this, like, when you're calling for the destruction of the country, that's utterly fucking insane. That's just insane. It is. So I think, people are descending to that rhetoric, like, they're long gone, they are. But just criticizing it normally, showing that kind of thing, I think that's completely okay. And that's why I need to see a disconnect between my Israeli friends who are non-stop, fucking, it's elections every couple of years. Like, it just shows how much it's not. They have lots of strong opinions about the government they do. And meanwhile, in America, where it's kind of like more about trying to protect, because they think any criticism could be negative towards Israel. And I don't think that's the case. I think, again, if we amplify these Israeli voices, it would change a lot of people's views, which they had negatively about Israel. So that's why I'm more pragmatic in the way I do things.
And going more into you advocating for the citizens. So I mentioned that we would speak about how you got in touch with the Argamani family. So for all those that don't know, Noah Argamani was the girl who was on the motorcycle on October 7th from the Nova Festival. And her mother right now is dying of cancer. It's terminal cancer, right?
Yeah.
So if you could kind of go into how did you reach out to that family, and what has the dialogue been like between you guys?
So I first met her roommate, Amir, who's he's a Druze. He is. He met Noah when he was traveling in India. He's a bunch of Israelis, and they became friends ever since. I saw him at one of the hostage talks I did, and then we became friends after that, because I don't know, in a way it really touched me, because I was like, there's this Druze guy this is just her roommate, right? Who's traveling across America to bring his friend home, and you could see the pain, like, how he misses her so much. You can really see the pain. Like, she's like a sister to him. So that really touched me. It did. And my big thing anytime when I was keeping meeting these hostages' families, were like, what do you want? It wasn't like, just take photos. I had no interest in that and post all those things. What do you want? And people told me that, like, we want a hostage deal. That's what we want. Very much. So first did something was in Fortnite with Amir. Then I met her cousin. I did two and other members of the family. And so yes, it became quite close because listen, the family are, I mean, they're going through a lot. Noah is their only daughter, and so Yaakov, his wife is dying, and his daughter may not return home alive. That's horrific. It is. Plus, her father is one of the kindest men around. He is. When she got kidnapped, one of the first things he said when he was interviewed was like, Palestinians are suffering too. We need to stop this war, this violence between all of us. He's like, there's good people in there. I hope they will take good care of all those things. Like, why is crying? This is genuinely how he is. And so, again, getting close to them, all those things, that's like I'm even the other day, like I think it was over a week ago or 2 weeks ago, they gave me the video first of Liora begging Biden because Netanyahu is useless. He's useless. He is. So that's like I'm begging Biden, be like, please help me. Very much so. And the end of the video was brings them home to end the war. That message there got changed after it did, the day after, very much from other people who got it. And which was
Changed
again,
by who?
you guys will be able to find it. I don't want to name names. I don't, to not put some people, organization on the spot. But it got changed to just bring them home. And to me, that was like, no, this is not the message of the family. You need to keep the message of the family. Agree or disagree, their message needs to be kept the same. It does, because a lot of hostages' families are kind of like, okay, because a lot of people are saying, get hostages back to war ends. And so that's what hostages' families also trying to say too. So that was one big thing. And then, as you know, it was what, a week ago? Yeah, a week ago, where the family forum was like, enough is enough, we're going to be public about it. We want a hostage deal. Enough, we've waited 6 months, we have, nothing's moved, all those things. And so that's why I have put myself a bit at odds, because the hostage families, even the other ones which I know, they want a deal. They want a deal. And the way I kind of stand now, I am on the side of the families. That's the only thing I care about. And no matter what the deal is, just get them home. Even if it's not a popular deal, even if it involves pretty much the idea of trying to withdraw out of Gaza, I think those families need to come home. They do. So that's why I'm very different, a bit more outspoken I am. And again, that's why they're protesting out from the streets. They are. And that's why I think we need to be bringing their voices more, showcasing in America more what is happening. Because again, some families have been very angry where they said, we have flown around the world for 6 months and nothing has moved. Nothing has moved. So it's understandable their frustrations and all those things. And that's why I think, again, quite controversial opinion, if we post or use the hostages, put their full message out. Because Elad, who died, who was found dead, his body was found dead yesterday, was brought back. His sister wrote a Facebook post where she basically blamed Netanyahu, and she's like, it's on you, this is a failure. She's so angry about it. But no one was kind of posting what his sister said. I'm like, you need to post what his sister said. Because I remember there's an IDF sheep who quoted him on Twitter because I wasn't happy about it. Because he was like, mission accomplished. I'm like, that was not mission accomplished. You failed in your job. You did very much so. So that's why, yeah, again, it's kind of going a bit different than the loudest voices. It is. And because even when I look at a lot of protests, right, the ceasefire crap, and I'm like, I'm looking at them and I'm like, why don't you have the hostages? Just say ceasefire hostage
at
deal.
the Oscars as well. At the Oscars as well.
Yeah, like that's the key. The key, if you want to end this war too, the hostages are the key. Everyone's all on the same team here. The hostages, family, and you come together. So that's why I've seen again. I'm not just criticizing one side, the other side too. Just with them, just kind of being like, either ceasefire now, okay, but what about the hostages? I do ceasefire now, so I was like, globalize the intifada. It's like, what? That's what we're like, what? So that's what I mean. It's camp. But another thing too, I have a friend of mine. His name is Ahmed Foud. I cannot pronounce his last name. It's Arabic. It is
Al Khatib.
Yes, yes. Well, you know about him, right? He's
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of been. He's a very good friend of mine. And Ahmed, say for example, I introduced him to Noah's family. I did. He directly spoke with the parents, everything. He did, and he put out something beautiful at the same time too. So Ahmed, he's anti-Hamas. He is really anti-Hamas. He hates them.
Yeah.
He's a big pro-peace guy. He's a real guy. He's not a crazy guy. He's not a token. He is an Isaac. So yes, he is mad because he's lost 31 members of his family during this war. And yes, he's not going to be like, I love the IDF. He wants a two-state. He wants all those things. He does. He's a proper ally. He's a proper ally. He is.
How did you reach him?
I actually, basically, we followed each other like in October when the war was kind of starting, when Ahmed started kind of speaking out, and we became friends since then. And I started introducing him behind the scenes to a lot of different people because I was like, I looked at Ahmed and I was like, he's the key. This guy can move us more towards peace because you need leaders, you do. So Ahmed, instead of like, say, what's the name? Is it the Green Prince? The Green Prince, the son of Hamas, who I think
Yeah.
is a nut job.
Yeah.
I think he's a nut job personally. I do. But that he's touring all these college campuses, and I'm like, okay, he's a nutter. Why the fuck aren't people bringing Ahmed? Ahmed actually deeply cares about the hostages. He cares about Israelis. He wants a two-state. Even like, say, for example, like he can't hear out of his left ear. It was an Israeli doctor who fixed his ear for him. He has so many great coexistence, not even coexistence, but friendship stories with Israelis. And this guy genuinely wants peace, but also genuinely wants a two-state solution also, which I think is important because both people aren't going anywhere. And so again, it's about being pragmatic. It is. I do think Ahmed, because if you look at these dumb kids on campuses, right? If there's someone like Ahmed speaking, they're like, we love Hamas. Ahmed would be like, what the fuck? I'm fucking from Gaza and the Hamas have fucking destroyed us. What the fuck are you talking about? So that would kind of reduce it to make a lot of people feel like idiots. But if we just coming from our side, like if I went to a college campus and I was like, Hamas are bad, they'd be like, yeah, of course you think Hamas is bad. So again, it's about being pragmatic in the way things are approached. The issue is the Green Friends is that the big joke, which we do a lot of us in private about him. He's kind of like, let's kill everyone. Everyone is Hamas. Like, whoa, you're being extreme, mate. Like he went from being a Hamas guy to just nutty. He did. So again, it's not someone who's reducing tensions or those things. That's kind of what I mean by about being pragmatic about things more. And I do think, again, things can be reduced. I mean, Ahmed has done so much. He has in the just past 6 months, he's grown so much and he's making a lot of waves. And that's why even on Twitter, I mean, one of the comments which I thought was hilarious once at one point, there was an Israeli guy who was like, I wish you were our prime minister. That's just how much again, the Israelis love him. They do. The pro-Palestine attack him all the time because
he gets a lot of hate on his comments. I see it all the time.
He does, like especially from Al Jazeera journalists, all those things.
Yeah.
But Ahmed speaks with integrity. He does. He speaks. He's a voice which a lot of Gazans can't have. Because again, I worked with Gazans. I did before this war, and the conversations were pretty much who has the best hummus, Gaza or the West Bank. Those were the conversations. And they were telling me they're like, the Egyptian border fucking sucks. Like, this border sucks. We can't get in and out. All those things. And again, it was just kind of getting along. I saw a very different thing than what a lot of people are trying to portray. Again, Gaza, they're under Hamas. They're under... It's like asking people to rebel against Putin. Oh, great. The Russians can't do that. You know, it's hard to rebel against a fascist, terrorist, government like Hamas. So that's why, again, because in all cases, I mean, after this war, we're going to have to rebuild and get along. We just are. And if you look at after World War II in Europe, right? Now we have the European Union. We still, I'm French, so still not exactly like the Germans march, but
It'll never be perfect.
Yeah, like I don't like Germany, but that's just multiple reasons. but we don't want to murder each other anymore. We just kind of like,
Yeah.
we're chill, we're all in an alliance together. And I do think we need to get to that point with Gaza and the Palestinians. And I do think we can get to that point. We need the good leaders, because leaders lead people, influence people. I think Ahmed is the key. I've been trying to look for like a Palestinian guy for a while who could do that. And Ahmed is absolutely the key, because he's not he's not an activist. He's a pragmatic guy. He's all about, because he even says he's kind of like, if there was a Palestinian state tomorrow, it'd be fucking civil war within the Palestinian state. So it's gonna be like, we need to get to all those steps. We do. So it's getting a bit about being pragmatic. And that's why it's a weird thing. With all this horror and war happening, I have a lot of hope. I do have a lot of hope for the future. I have a lot of hope. I do think a lot of Americans are going to look back on the rise of anti-Semitism and be like, what the fuck did we do here? Or how did we let this happen? Very much to that. And I do absolutely believe, I do think there will be peace between Israel and Palestine. I do think we will get to one point where people won't love each other, but they will get along. Because even like, I give you examples. So my friends in Lebanon, they're very anti the government because they're constantly at war. So it's understandable, right? It's
the Israeli government.
Yeah, it's the Israeli government. You know, it's understandable. Like, listen, it's what it is. But my friends in Lebanon, they were like, listen, the moment there's a two-state, we will visit both countries. And they're even like a lot of them anti-BDS, but they can't speak out because Lebanon has its laws where you cannot interact with any Israelis. And then you have Hezbollah. So they're kind of like, oh, we can't say anything. That's what I mean. There's a lot of Lebanese people who are like, they don't like the BDS laws. They rather get along with Israelis, and they just want this to end. And they said they will visit Israel until a two-state solution happens. That's what I mean. There is steps where I'm seeing where we can find more kind of common ground. Because even, again, my friends in Lebanon, they're always like, you know, they like watching Israeli TV shows. They like Gal Gadot. They do. So that's what I mean. That's why I do believe we can actually come to a lot more getting along. And what's hilarious, my friends in Lebanon, they think the Americans are crazy. They look at the college campuses and they're like, why are they cheering Hamas and the Houthis? What the fuck is happening, kind of thing? And so that's what I mean, where such an interesting disconnect where, and of course there is extremists over there in the Arab world, but when you have a lot of young people from the Arab world, what the fuck is that? Because even I remember on Twitter once too, the Eurovision, this very Eurovision singer got announced, right? And one American was like, she doesn't look like she's Middle Eastern, those things. And then the comments were hilarious because all the Lebanese that came in, and the Lebanese were like, she looks like she's from Lebanon. What on earth are you talking about? Like, it's the Mediterranean. This isn't this Saudi Arabia. It's not the Arabian desert, you know, where there's camels and everything. So that's again what I mean. When Lebanese people are kind of like, what the fuck are Americans doing with their weird race science kind of thing? It just shows how what kind of insanity we've reached in America. We
definitely have.
Absolutely.
You have another question?
I mean, my question, it's kind of unrelated to this, but with the emergence of artificial intelligence and the augmented reality and virtual reality and all those things, how can that enhance the teaching of Holocaust remembrance and teaching about anti-Semitism and stuff in regards to Israel? I mean, like, how do you think that plays into it?
So that's actually a great question. VR, why I don't care about VR that much is because the audience isn't that big. It just isn't. AR, I don't think there's any use in it very much. I think AR can be awesome for doctors or construction workers, all those things with the headsets, for jobs. And I think there is some Holocaust museums which have used that stuff. It doesn't really work. There's not much engagement towards it, especially with VR headsets. People either feel sick or it's dirty and they're sweating everything. People need to tell stories and place empathy first rather than the technology first. And that's been the problem. So, because I remember there's one museum which I won't name, because actually it's very much like this museum. They made an AR app on their phone, right? So you can basically place on your table a camp in AR. And I looked at it and I was kind of like, so I'm looking at a Lego camp. It's not a Lego camp, but that's what it looked like. On the table with a bunch of Jews working in it. And your Holocaust museum, you made this. And a video game was viewed as controversial years ago. What the fuck is happening here? So again, it's using, there's no reason for that. I looked at that model and I was like, this 3D model, just give it to me. I can make it in with other things. I can bring it to our digital museum. People can actually explore it, all those things. So yeah, that's kind of what I mean. AR and VR, I don't believe in it. I think it's a waste of time. And I think the firms, the design firms, which have pushed the Holocaust museums to do that, and I've been very public and privately too saying this, they're ripping those museums off. They are. Because there's no kind of VR experience where people have come back and go, I'm not a racist anymore. I feel more empathy more than a film. Very much. So what's the point of getting VR? It's cool. It's just like, I think it's cool to play games and all those things, but I didn't think it reaches the masses. It's just something, a waste of money. It is very much so. Because even if you look, I've been advocating more. If people want to recreate things completely real, right? They could just do it with Unreal Engine and they just have projectors all across the room, so you make an immersive experience like that. So you can be inside it within the room, like say some projectors on the walls, super realistic without being super sweaty inside a headset. Because again, it's just the headsets. That's unsanitary after a while inside a museum, I think too.
Yeah, I would not be into I've never understood the whole VR thing.
I mean,
Well,
when I was in Israel, there was like this VR experience, as like it's if you were kind of like in the concentration camp, and I thought that was like I thought it was pretty interesting. I know a lot of people in my
Where
group
Was
was
it a filmed one? Like,
yeah, it was like a film. It was like a film, and it was like a journey through like the camp, and it was like kind of like it was kind of like a film type of vibe.
so,
It
so, so
wasn't
I
like a
think
video game.
So I think that can be, because again, because I noticed when a lot of people are like, you need to go visit Auschwitz. I'm like, when they tell people that online, I'm like, yeah, most
Yeah,
people can't go to Poland.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, it's
so,
expensive. Yeah.
so I do think cases like that, I think that's fantastic, for example, right? But I don't think that should be inside a museum, because why do you go to a museum for that? I think if anything,
It wasn't in a museum. It was in
Oh.
like in Israel. It was a specific like experience like company, but it wasn't like in a museum itself.
well, Israel actually does, they're way more ahead in terms of Holocaust things. Even I remember, was it 2 years ago? A lot of their celebrities were on their Instagrams doing talks with Holocaust survivors. And fair enough, that was an idea which I had a couple of years ago. We did one thing with a comedian in the UK on Twitch, we did, and Lily Ebert, who's an Auschwitz survivor. The guy's a Lebanese British comedian. And long story short, his TV show was pretty much kind of like Jackass, it was. But he was a comedian, so he knew how to ask questions, how to make it entertaining, all those things. And everyone very much loved it. And again, it was on Twitch. And what I tried after was kind of like, let me try getting some celebrities to maybe to do this American ones, right? Tried reaching out to the team who was on Hunters, that Amazon show. It was all like, oh no, people are traveling. It was loads of excuses. It was try getting Tiffany Haddish, like always excuses. It was because people are like, oh no, we don't really want to touch this kind of thing. When in fact, Israel has their biggest pop stars who are doing these talks with Holocaust survivors on Instagram. And that's again, Israel kind of be more ahead than America. And again, that's another idea where people are like, well, why isn't anything working? Well, this is why nothing's working. Because again, Holocaust survivors, why should they just be going to schools, which is maybe 30 students, right? Maybe if you're lucky, 100 in a day. Why shouldn't we just be doing more of these things online? That's one I told one museum, I was like, make a Twitch channel, I'll help you. But of course, the board, all those things. And they're like, what happens with the comments? And I'm like, have you seen your Instagram? It's already bad. It is. Because I'm also like, the survivor's not going to see it. And plus on Twitch, you have moderation, you have all those things. It went great with Dom Jolly. So that's kind of what I mean. Again, the failure of organizations, and again, Israel thinking more outside the box. I actually think, honestly, if more organizations were like Israel, I think we would have be way better, more ahead. We would than we are now.
It's really interesting to hear. Okay, just finally, last question. I wanted to ask you about this new game, Imagination is the Only Escape. Do I have the name right on that?
That's actually my old game.
Your old game.
That's what Light into Darkness was. Funny enough.
Oh,
Light and Darkness was first, that game, right? No, my new game is Tears of Libya, but that game, Imagination, that's one game where I'm like, oh, please go away. I'm kind of like, please pretend I never kind of was playing.
Okay, no questions on that game. So then
but I can talk about that because it is it's actually interesting. That's how Light and Darkness started when I was 21. And I will say this, thank God I didn't have the budget back then. Thank God. Because I don't think I was a good enough director. All those things, I think I would have been like, what the fuck did he just make kind of thing. Yeah. So that's why I'm glad they actually took that long. Because again, me as a director, I was like more experienced basically at that point. But yeah, it was the set in France was very different. It was more kind of like having imaginary things, all those things. But then with Light and Darkness, they just went full blown realistic. Which I'm actually glad for in the end. So that's what I mean. It kind of did take me over 10 years to figure out, or to mature and kind of do it the right way. And I think what's been great Light and Darkness now is that it has opened up the door for other game developers to be able to do this work too. So this other game, which I'm very jealous about, which just got a lot of funding, very jealous about it. So there's another game being made about Holocaust because of Light and Darkness, which has opened up the door for everything. I'm jealous about it. I need to calm down about that because I did open up the doors and it's a good thing. It is. But so that's what I mean. The space is changing now. It is where now it's become acceptable. But basically my next game, Tears of Libya, it's about Holocaust in Libya, but it will go past 1948 too. So it's going to be very different where first it's to address the Holocaust in Libya, because I've had enough of people ignoring Sephardim I have. And then it will explain what happened after the creation of Israel. Because with the ethnic cleansing, those things, because even like in France, we're like majority Sephardic because Algeria kicked out all the Jews. They did. So it's what happened. And it will end up in France. So it's very much to kind of show that, because like I explained to people, I think some people, that's why I think people don't really know their history. When a lot of people compare the anti-Semitism which is happening now to the Holocaust, I'm like, that's not, you're doing it wrong. They showcases you don't know anything else. Right now, it's not similar to the Holocaust. The Holocaust was government ran. It was industrial genocide. It was every part of government. Now, thankfully, in the West, most governments are like, what the fuck is happening? We're not cool with this. Governments, I'm talking about. Elected governments. Right now, it's more, if we were to compare it to something, it's more similar to the War of 1948. It is where anti-Semitism came out in the Islamic countries, Muslim countries very much, and started attacking the Jews for whatever was happening in Israel, all those things. That's more similar to what I'm seeing now. Even kind of the language, when we're seeing a lot of language which is similar to Soviet anti-Zionism, all those things. So it's very much more similar to that. So that's why I think it's relevant today too. It is because a lot of people tend to think, this is what a lot of anti-Israel people tend to think. They just kind of like, well, there's a bunch of Jews after, like, we like this area and we just move into it. That's not how it fucking happened. That isn't. Why there's also so many Jews in Israel? Because they all got fucking kicked out. They had nowhere else to go. So of course they're going to go to Israel too. And there's, majority of Israelis are descendants of Middle East and North African Jews. They are. That's just a fact. It is. So it's to kind of showcase again the reality of what happened without me taking kind of any political side. It's just me showing what happened. And that's again to kind of showcase that via video games and pop culture, because now I feel like it's very important for people to know that. Because again, trust me, I fucking hate the Netanyahu government. My Twitter feed is mostly fuck Netanyahu at this point. But I don't like lies. I don't like lies or when people distort the truth. And the reality is, people are distorting truth from Israel non-stop. Like how they kind of like, it was given to them after the Holocaust. I was like, no, Balfour Declaration, World War One. All those countries, they weren't even countries. That belonged to the Ottoman Empire. And then people within those regions all wanted their own country. And so the Jews who were there also wanted their own country too. Like that's why Sarah Aronson worked as a spy for the British. She witnessed Armenian genocide and then also worked, then after that, she was like, what the fuck is happening? And then she also worked for the British, so there would be a Jewish state, like how everyone wanted their own state there. So again, it's when people portray it as a colonial thing, all those things, it's just, again, it's all about, to me, it's just kind of showcasing the truth and kind of criticize the actions of the government. Yes, because no country is innocent, all done bad things. It's their countries they are. So that's really, again, where my kind of focus for my next game is, again, so people know about the Holocaust in North Africa, but also really understand what happened to North African Jews. Because the reality is this, there's none left in Libya now. There's none left in Algeria. There's none, or in Egypt, that one, maybe. So Yemen, I think the last one got out, maybe still have prisoner, I forgot. But so it's really just showcase the reality. Because again, I believe when you just kind of talk to people, just doing these talks, you're not really convincing people. I think people need to see stories and histories. And when a story very much is something which just makes people interested in that. I think that's why just enough talks. And that's why we're not solving anything. We're not solving anything because we are just mostly speaking inside a bubble. We are. So I think the Jewish influencers are important. Absolutely do. But they're not going to solve things. They are. You need to have more people from outside, all those things. So again, within pop culture, and because again in France, since we're majority Sephardic, our films are mostly Sephardic there. So you'll have Holocaust films about Tunisia or those things. So that's why I think if we can just get more to that within pop culture, I think we managed to change things, make people understand more. Because again, I just do have an issue with Israel being called a colonial, this and that. It's a colony of what? It's not a fucking colony. It isn't like, you know, people don't even know what they're talking about, like colonialism or those things. It's now like, there's no more colonies, guys. What are you talking about? So you just have to do it via pop culture, I very much believe. Just tell stories, and I think that's how you make things better. You do it's being done the non-aggressive way, because again, everyone will play a free video game, and just because even the response which have gone for Light and Darkness, like in Saudi Arabia, it's been nothing but kind messages where they kind of like, I didn't know about this, I didn't know about this. This is kind of very interesting to know. And they're like, I've never met a Jewish person, I have no clue how they were. And it also is done really well in Morocco too. So that's kind of what I mean. There can be bridge building between basically entertainment and, I mean, if you look at Saudi Arabia, right, the Israeli FIFA team were able to go there to do an esports tournament, FIFA one, and even had the Israeli national anthem played in Saudi Arabia, even to have no diplomatic relations. So again, it's showcasing how much more powerful. That's a fascinating thing. That should have been monumental, honestly. Like that should have been huge. But if it was a real, not real, but if it was like a physical football team, people would have made more noise about it, the organization. But because it was video games, it's like, don't really care much. I'm like, guys, that's fucking monumental. So again, the organizations need to stop being old that they do. Just get young people in very much, because things can be fixed. Again, showing with Saudi Arabia, we've just got to start doing things differently.
Yeah, and I imagine seeing that feedback makes you so much more, gives you so much more positive thoughts, and
yeah, that's what I think.
Especially in the face of all
like
the hate comments and stuff that you see, it kind of counteracts that.
That's why I think that's why I think I live in my own bubble too.
Mm.
Like I tell people I'm completely aware because I'm seeing positive things. I'm seeing. There's one tweet which I did, which I saw personally is quite funny because I keep on getting Palestinians in Israel keep on liking all my tweets, and I'm just wanted a tweet with a GIF where it's like peace kiss, you know, because it's like, well, you guys are all like on my stuff, just kiss, just make up. Because so I'm not seeing it even within my kind of Twitter or those things. So that's kind of, I do believe there is a way, and it's how we present things. It's how, listen, we've got to both admit at this point, happened October 7th, fucking terrible. What's happened to some innocent civilians in Gaza, fucking terrible. We need to fix this. We need to come together pretty much for the future, all those things. I know I sound like a hippie, but I've seen it kind of happen. Let's put it this way. Like, again, Ahmed's become one of my closest friends. He has. And he's given me more hope about the future, and even the future of Israel, than a lot of our leaders. And that's a kind of like, holy shit, a Palestinian guy is giving me more hope than our leaders. We are really bad off right now. And it's again because he very much does believe he thinks we can fix things. It's good to have hope, even if it's unrealistic, because then instead of just reaching the stars, you might just reach the top of a house or mountain. But it's still progress. It is very much being made. So that's why I do believe, I think we can change things. I think we can reduce things, but I think we just need to change course. We do. In a way, we need to get out the crazies, meaning the far left and the far right, because they've merged into one big monster they have. So we're like, we have to push out and get more to the center and be more kind of bridge builders. And so that's why I think it will happen. I do. I do think, as much as this is a terrible war, and Israel's in a lot of trouble right now internationally, but I do think this is also a moment for peace. It is, because don't forget, again, after World War II, Europe was destroyed. We managed to create the European Union after. I think some people after a while, they just, because like Ahmed says, he's like, the people of Gaza, what Hamas has done, they are over Hamas now. They're over them. They're like, that's like, you know, a lot of the pro-Palestine accounts will not show how the people of Gaza like, fuck you, Hamas, like we've had enough, and protests and all those things. So that's why I think there will be change. I do.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
And when can we expect that game to be ready?
Probably in a few years. I
Sorry to
think
pressure you.
yeah, probably a few years, because what I'm doing now, again, I'm focusing on, I'm building the Holocaust Museum, just keeps on getting new updates non-stop. And yeah, that's going to be a few years, because it's kind of like Light and Darkness. I saw that it's my short film, and this is more going to be like my kind of blockbuster, if that makes sense. So I see that, and plus we have a lot of known actors that want to work on it. So I'm more just kind of taking my time and seeing, you know, it will just be a big one, because that one with Lifestyle has had success. I wanted to have more success. I do, so that's why we're planning for something quite big. So it's at least 3 years from now, at least, I would say.
Understood.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And Luke, can you tell our audience where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, so it's Luc Bernard, but LUC, not the American version. And just beware, you can follow me, but beware, I'm quite controversial at times. I am, so I'm just warning people.
I don't agree with that assessment.
Really?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, I've been following you for a while on Twitter. I always like what you have to say.
Oh, that's kind of good. Maybe
This is why I've invited you on.
Maybe it's because I've heard a bunch of Netanyahu supporters about.
Maybe this could be
doing.
Yeah.
But how dare you say that Netanyahu is the best? He is our daddy. Like, it's all I can. Oh, so maybe it's because I see lots of Netanyahu supporters. But yeah, it's again, it's a weird thing. I've become really pro-Israeli citizen, and I think Israel's great. I do. I just criticize all governments. It's just how I am. It's in my nature. It's when you're French, you're kind of like, if I was in Israel right now, I'll probably be out on the streets burning everything, this and that. I'm like, this is fun. This reminds me of France.
Yeah, yeah. Rich history of protest.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that's why I can actually see. I mean, Israel right now reminds me a lot of France. Even the Israelis, they're kind of grumpy, they say everything to your face, this and that. Like, so I think that's why I like it. Had a very, it's not French, but it had a very French, Mediterranean type culture.
Yeah.
It does.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you all for listening to today's episode, and thank you so much, Luke, for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.